Hello booktube, it's Roz and I'm here for I guess it's a bit of a Sunday ramble. Um I I've been tagged in a lot of tags lately, and I think it's my own fault for having done the tag about tags. I pop into people's minds a bit too often. It's fine, it's lovely. I don't, but I'm suffering from that guilt of not keeping up. So I'm finding myself doing a lot of videos that are tag videos, and I don't want to only do that as what I put out. If yeah, seems a bit dull and self-referential. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ramble a bit in a positive way, talk about things I've just started, give a nod to some readathon events that are happening at the moment, talk about a few things that I've just finished, do like a little mini scallydandle to the Ivory Coast, and then morph, segue seamlessly into a more informal version of the Pain Over Joy tag. So let's give it a go. Firstly, what have I started this? I'm all excited, I guess, about the things that I've started this reading week and the things that I've finished. And number one exciting thing that I've started, and this is, I suppose, one of the things I'm reading for the Asian Readathon, is Trees on a Slope by Huang Sun Wan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm buddy reading this with Sean, who will be sure to get that pronunciation right because he's scrupulous about that. It's a Korean novel, not model. That would be something completely different, wouldn't it? A Korean novel written in the period just after the Korean War, about the Korean War, and it is, well, we've read half of it, and it is a knock me dead good book. I'm very excited to talk about it more in the future. And then the other book that I've started this week and haven't yet finished is another absolute miracle book, more predictably for me because it's by Virginia Woolf. But it's one of hers that I've never read, and that's The Waves. And I think perhaps I never read it because it's got the reputation for being at the more challenging end of the output of a writer who's known for being on the relatively challenging side. I'm reading this with Sina and Laura, and it's superb. Yeah, Woolf's writing is sometimes almost painful in how good it is. Yeah, like you read a sentence, you just think like, how does she do that? So lucky me, starting two such excellent things. I've wanted also at this point to see, rambling, it's not good for me. I was going to say this is one of my 1900 to 1950 reads, because another of May's readathons, along with the Asian Readathon, is Katie at Books and Things is doing a 1900 to 1950 thing, and so that's been the prompt to get me to pick that one up. Now I've just heard about a new readathon that's happening in June. I love the idea of it, and so I want to talk about it like early on when you got enough time to plan for it, and in case you haven't seen it on the two channels that are hosting it, and that is Tori of Hufflepuff Discovery and Jennifer Brooks. And this is now what have they called it? The Ancients-a-thon. Yeah, Ancients-a-thon. It's about saying, let's read things from before 1700, because a lot of people don't tend to read things from before 1700, and there's so many wonderful things to read. I mean, you've got everything from Gilgamesh to Restoration comedy, haven't you? You've got, classical Greek stuff, you've got medieval stuff from around the world, a lot of different interesting religious texts, which links to maybe Midrash, which you may be doing in May. Shakespeare, spoilt for choice. You're spoilt for choice, people. So I'll link to their announcement videos, and yes, be a devil, be brave, and have a go at something from before 1700. Now, thinking of being a devil and being brave, the thing that I will be reading in June, because I'm reading it all year, is Dante's Divine Comedy, which I'm because I'm following Tom at LA Books, one canto or so a week project. And the thing that I'm most excited about having finished this month is this week is that we've finished the Inferno, and my sense of achievement and satisfaction is overwhelming. Plus, also like a little bit of regret at coming to the end of something that's been a beautiful experience. Except that it's all right, because we're going straight on to Purgatorio, so woohoo! And that will do me nicely for Ancientsathon. I may also, could this be when I turn to Gilgamesh and actually read that? I wonder. We'll see. I shall certainly pick a couple of other interesting things for that. Now, Tom of LA Books, as well as being a Dante enthusiast, is someone who's loves and is also involved in the production of graphic novels. Now, I struggle with graphic novels, and then I hear someone like him, and or like Daniel at Guilty Feet, or talking about graphic novels that they really enjoyed and really rate, and I think, I should have another go. So this week I have. So another thing I finished this week is Aya de Yupugon, by Marguerite Aboué. And this is our mini scallydandle, because this is a graphic novel from a writer from the Côte d'Ivoire, or Ivory Coast. Very helpfully, it being a graphic novel, she's put a little picture in to show you where the Ivory Coast is in Africa. West Africa, just under the bulge. It's a delightful book. I think what she was setting out to do, and she did very successfully, was to use the graphic novel form to just remind, because she was by then living in France, remind people here, like in Western Europe, I suppose, or America, that, people in the Ivory Coast are just, that perhaps people's perception of Africa doesn't reflect the diversity of African countries, and the fact that teenage girls like Aya in this novel are just getting on with their lives, and worrying about all the same things, boyfriends and clothes and studying and friendships, and it's a very sweet book. Even though it's a very sweet book, it has the graphic novel problem for me, that I just find myself wanting more words and forgetting to appreciate that the strength of this book is, in many ways, is in the pictures, as done by her husband Clément Houbrey, who's some Frenchman, which gives you just a lovely picture. I mean, he spent a lot of time in Abidjan, where the book is based, and they're just full of like little details that bring it to life for you. So I would warmly recommend it, and if you're the kind of person who can stop yourself just thinking about the words and look at the pictures as well, you will enjoy it even more than I did. Now, May is also Springathon, isn't it? And I finished my main Springathon choice, which was The Invention of Nature, by Andrea Wolf. Yes, Andrea, not Althea, Andrea. And it's a book about Alexander von Humboldt. In fact, the sort of byline is Alexander von Humboldt's New World. And what a fascinating explorer and scientist and writer and human being Humboldt is. And I really only kind of knew of him from things like Humboldt's Penguins and the Humboldt Current, that makes the coast of South America cold, the Peru side, not the Brazil side. A lot of the book is about him. The second half of the book is about the people that he influenced, and what a list that is. Everyone from Thoreau to Muir to Darwin. Yeah. If you haven't yet done a Springathon non-fiction book. It's well worth reading, or even not for Springathon. So now I said that the waves I'm reading for the 1900 1950 event, Readathon thing. But the other thing that I've got on the go for that is a bit of poetry, because one of the prompts is to read something to do with the First World War, and that made me think that it would be a good time to go back to some World War One war poetry. And I did a tag the other day. Tags are a bit of a theme at the moment, about the literary adventures tag, and talked about going to the Malverns and all the literary associations there. And on the way back, driving back from the Malverns, I visited Gloucester, lovely cathedral city, and saw a monument there to a World War One poet that I didn't really know, and that's Ivor Gurney, obviously, who was born in Gloucester and was a chorister in Gloucester Cathedral that I went and visited, and so I thought I'd already had in mind to read Edward Thomas, and I started reading some of that, but I thought, let's have a go at Ivor Gurney. And I read his collection, Seven to Somme, and it's patchy, but in places absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to come back to that in relation to the Pain Over Joy tag. So I'm going to move on to that now. We're at 11 minutes, so can I get that in about 9? We'll see. So the Pain Over Joy tag was originated by Jessica of Lady Lovestade Reads, but I was tagged by Scott and Nell and by Steve Donoghue. Now, I understand why people tagged me in this one, because I think if you watch my videos regularly, you'll have noticed that I have a slight tendency probably to read a disproportionate number of books that are about things that are a bit weird or a bit miserable. There's a bit of a theme there, or things I enthuse about tend to be in that area. So I could see why you'd think, oh, this is a tag for us. Having said that, I think this tag sets up a real false dichotomy, and I struggled a bit with the prompts for the tag. In that I just want to just say no, 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 and that's not a very useful way to respond to a tag. So I'm going to talk about this and kind of cover the prompts, but not worry too much about answering them exactly. And I noticed that a couple of the versions of this tag that I've seen, good ones, one by Brian at Bookish, and even more so, one by Mark Nash, that I strongly recommend you go and watch. They've sort of used it as a jumping off point to think about, pain and joy in literature without setting them up as opposites, or like a book has to be about one or the other. Because the first prompt for this tag is, do you mostly read books illustrating pain or joy, and why? Well, I mostly read books about human beings, written by human beings, and so there will be pain and there will be joy, and yeah, that's it, isn't it? I'm going to think of a song lyric here. Spire. Oh, maze. Joy and pain. They're like sunshine and rain. Yeah, you have to have both to live. Waxing a bit philosophical here, but it's true, isn't it? I mean, it's obvious. So, and the next question is, do you see books about pain as more intellectually valuable? Why or why not? And no, I don't. So why do I read a lot of books that have a fair amount of sort of human misery in them here and there? And I think the problem is that it's I think it would be very, very hard to write a really, really good, interesting, sustained, long book that is all about joy. you know it, you need the joy and pain, the sunshine and the rain to make a story work. I'm very suspicious of uplit. If something's described as as that. I'm probably not going to pick it up because I suspect that it's not going to have the emotional range that I'd like. It's like if you think of romantic fiction is perhaps as close as you get to that sort of joy book. But actually, it's not all about joy. It's only good and enjoyable to read because there's a feeling of will it work, won't it work, of conflict and tension and misunderstandings happening. Emma, let's say Jane Austen's Emma. That book would be, well, Emma as a heroine would be intolerable because she's so happy and her life is so straightforward. If she didn't also have moments of terrible self-doubt and self-recrimination and when things go wrong for her, it's essential. Yeah. Can anyone in the comments, can anyone tell me of a book that is just a good novel, an enjoyable novel that is just joyful? I can't think of one. I really can't. Whereas, okay, I do think that you can write poetry about joy. And I mentioned earlier about reading the Ivor Gurney book and that it was a bit variable. And he obviously, where he's writing, about World War One, there's a lot of pain and misery there. He tries sometimes to write sort of uplifting poems about the war, sort of with, we're doing this for England and this is a good thing, and and there's a sort of slightly this sort of religious and patriotic element that is actually a bit tiresome. But some of the poems are about joyful memories of the natural world and beauty and countryside of Gloucestershire, where he grew up, and those are just gorgeous and hugely successful. And when I think about it, in a poem, you can capture that intense emotion of joy or uh, inspiration or happiness or love. But when you try and keep that going for a whole novel, it's not going to work, is it? Equally, I don't like reading all books that are all miserable. I won't read what would you call them? Misery memoirs. Now, I remember reading, what was it called? A Child Named It or something years and years ago by Dave Pulitzer, and I thought I'm never going to read another book that wallows in that in yeah, ever again. I felt cheated just recently, a couple of years ago, when I read Educated by Tara Westover, because that I thought, oh, well, is this going to be a misery memoir? And all the reviews and everyone who'd read it said, no, it's not like that at all. It's about the power of education. And actually I read it, and it was, or what it was, well, it's like if you want to settle scores with your difficult family who gave you an upbringing that you're not happy with, just do that by all means, but not in a book that you asked me to read. I had the same experience reading Rose Tremaine's autobiography about her childhood. That was really disappointing. So, no thank you to misery memoirs. Now, Jeanette Winterson is an author who I know a lot of people really, really love. And I like her work. I'm not a kind of huge fan, but I think she got it right because she, if you have a really unusual and difficult childhood, it's not a bad idea to draw on that to write fiction, is it? That's natural and appropriate and a good thing. And when she wrote Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, she made a good decision to fictionalize and properly fictionalize her childhood and youth. So when she came to write her memoir about the same period many years later, and what's that called? It's got a great title, Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal, which is something her adopted mother once said to her. Yeah, she was mature enough and had enough experience of life to look back and not write a misery memoir, to write something that is much more thoughtful about and I suppose has more understanding of her adoptive family and what she was like and what they were. Yeah. there you go. So not all misery, not all joy, please. So next prompt is, why do you think major book prizes like the Booker and the Pulitzer mainly award books about pain? Well, do they? Now, I was thinking of a couple of recent Booker winners that I've actually really enjoyed. And one of those would be, well, two, Wolfhall and Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel. Now, admittedly, someone, gets beheaded at the end, Bring Up the Bodies, but it's not a book about pain. It's a book about people and politics and, just life, Tudor life, everything, power. Yeah, love. So another would be Milkman. Excellent book. And yes, it is set in Ireland, Northern Ireland, at the time of the Troubles. So, there's pain there. But it's also got moments of joy and humour. And yeah, so I don't buy it. I don't buy it as a question. So let's do the last couple of prompts quickly. Do you agree with the phrase guilty pleasure? And why or why not? Well, reading is a pleasure, and no, I would never apply guilty pleasure. I might apply it to like cream cakes or bottles of champagne, but not in terms of reading. Yeah, just no. And do you think books that focus on joy are guilty pleasures? Well, no, because I think, as I say, I can't think of a totally joy book that would be a pleasure to read, but I'd be delighted to be proved wrong. Yeah, I mean, even like this one that I was talking about reading, it's a joyful book, but it has moments of violence and sadness and yeah, yes, life. But I did like the last prompt, which is, do you read in secret? Are there books you read but never talk about because of embarrassment, shame, or guilt about liking them? Well, no, there aren't books that I don't talk about because of embarrassment and shame. No, but I do read in secret. And that is perhaps a guilty pleasure because, there are times when I'm loving a book so much that I will just go and hide to read it to get away with the fact that I really ought to be doing something more useful instead. I've even, I might disappear into the bathroom or I don't know, pretend I need to go and do an errand and actually read as I walk, just to have the secret opportunity to do a little bit of extra reading. Finally, I've got to tag some people, and I'm going to tag 3 people that I think would have a different take on this tag from me, and that's AJ Dunn, Karen Evans, and Kelly of Books I'm Not Reading. So there you go.